Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
It's late, it's loud, and live from London with your host, Toby Doncaster, on the Monday Late Late Show. Tonight, I talk to special guest Kay about behaviour management in the FE classroom. What are the challenges, and how do we cope with them?
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Okay, you've got loads of experience teaching 16 to 19-year-olds. What sort of subjects do you teach?
So it's all within construction. So at the moment I'm doing multi-skills. So we're doing a little bit of brick, we're doing carpentry, some electrics, some plumbing. So a bit of a round robin on sort of like most of the constructions courses that we teach, you know. So it's really the basics. It's like a kind of getting them interested into it and just finding out if they've got some skills. And
right,
few of that have. They, you know, some of them are absolutely fantastic.
So and once they get in, you know, do you find that the interest sort of gets them more motivated? Do people get demotivated when they find that they can't cope?
Some of them do. Yeah, some of them do. You know, usually what happens is you'll go in, you'll start doing something. Obviously, we start off with all the health and safety stuff, and they get really bored with that. But I try to make that a little bit fun, you know, because I think when they're having fun, they're learning. So we play a lot of games when we're doing it, sort of like memory type things. And, and we get them moving around.
Yeah.
I mean, I was always told that, you know, sort of like a student's attention level is their age plus a minute. After that, they're licking windows. So you've got to really, you know. So, you know, if they're like 16, you've probably got them for about 17 minutes, and then you have to change things up.
That's right. Yeah. So in an hour, we're talking at least 4 sort of activities that they could be, and different activities as well. So it's not just one worksheet, here's another worksheet and yet another worksheet.
Yeah, that's boring. You know, they've done that at school. They've done all that sort of thing. They don't want to do that. They want to be treated like adults, but they're still kind of kids. So you've got to sort of like kind of feel it. You've got to find out where they're at. And once you've done that and you start hitting the right buttons, you start getting results.
And what do these results look like? When they become more practical, they're more kinesthetic, or are they able to verbalize? Are they able to write?
Yeah. So what I do is I play a game when we're doing all the theory stuff, because they'd much rather be doing the practical stuff, but the theory stuff is really boring for them. So what I try and do is so I teach a lesson, I go through it, and I go straight to assessment. I'm pointing at people, I'm getting people to talk. You know, not all the time does everybody want to talk though. So sometimes you have to put them sort of like kind of into groups. So then what I do is I split them up, and then I say to them, right, okay, I want you to write one question on what we've just been doing. One question each, just one question, anything that we've been doing this morning.
So it's sort of like a retrieval practice.
Yeah, so they start writing everything down. And then what I do is I try and pick somebody who, out of that group, I'll get them to nominate a spokesman. And then that spokesman comes up, I split them into an A and B team, you know, sort of like if I've got 12 students, 6 on one side, 6 on the other side. Then I give them a pen, and they go up to the board, and I say, okay, now you're the teacher. So they come up with a list, read out their questions to the other side. And they have a ball, like a softball, and they throw it to the person that they're sort of like kind of going to ask that question to.
Yeah.
And if that person has been listening and they're great with it, they'll get the question straight away. if they, and then they will get 1 point. So the student that's throwing the ball and asks questions will then start writing on the board. So we've got numeracy and we've got literacy without them even knowing, because they're keeping a score and they're writing down. And then we've got group work, because if they don't get that question straight away, 1 point, then they can say team, and they can get all the rest of them to help out, and then they get half a point.
Right. Okay.
So we work this on both sides, and you know what? The results of this game is unbelievable. You know, they're really harsh with their questions. No, you didn't get that right. You've got to, and they end up teaching themselves. And I'm just like a referee. You know, I'm just refereeing.
Yeah.
And it works all the time. And in fact, so much so that they asked me to play the game. Can we play that game again? Can we do that again?
And in fact, they don't seem to realise that they're actually doing work.
Yes.
So
it's a little bit like hiding the peas under the potato, giving them to the kids.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing.
Brilliant stuff. So, what other? So you've got the questioning activity. So, and so obviously your sort of encoding stage, you know, the stage where you're actually explaining something. That how long would you normally take with that then to go through a lesson? 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes?
Yeah. So I'll probably give them sort of like kind of about 10 minutes to write down their questions. And then, you know, sort of like if it's a small group, so it's like 6 questions each. So it might take half an hour altogether. You know, so like you've taught the lesson before, and they really, really get into it. They love it. I mean, I've had people that come in and observe the lessons, and they're absolutely chuckling away in the corner because they love it. You know, I'm not saying it works every time, but the majority of the time, it works. And then there's other strategies that you can use. You know, like sometimes I'll just move all the tables around because it's, you know, they're getting bored. So I'll just move the tables around. And then with assessment, I'll red card people, because you get people who answer all questions. So I'll say, like a referee, I'll say, okay, you're red carded. Let's give somebody else a chance. So we're moving it around.
Keeping it active. Just out of interest, what sort of age range have you got? Is it just 16s, or do you in a group?
No. No. I mean, the majority are probably about 16 to 20. But right. I have a few people in one of my groups at the moment, and I've got a gentleman the same age as me.
Wow.
Which is like in his 60s. So, and you know what? He's interacting with some of these younger students, and they love him because, you know, sort of like he's a little bit more focused. And if they need a little bit of support, you know, so like it's almost like having a second teacher, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
So it works well. It works great.
Do you set students up to mentor each other, buddy each other, anything like that?
Do you know what? I have done, but what you usually find is that they do it naturally by themselves.
Sure.
You know, I had one guy who's a little bit older. He's a Polish chap, and there's a younger Polish student, and he was sort of kind of going down the wrong route with one of the students, but then the older student kind of saw this, and he sort of kind of got in there, and he said, like, you know, come with me, I'll show you how to do this, and he's turned it completely round, and it's fantastic. It's really worked.
Now, what I'm wondering, is you've obviously managed. The thing is that you've got something that works in your favor, which is that the learners are interested in the subject. What advice would you give to somebody who's teaching a subject that they're not too keen on, like English and maths and things like that, where they've got to grapple with something a little bit more challenging, if you like?
It's making it interesting. You know, I'm not an English teacher, but I did at one time have to cover for English. So I just thought to myself, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do to make this interesting? So we were talking about sort of like kind of sentences, like formal sentences, So what I did is I turned it round. I did it backwards. So I had a sentence and I said, okay, this is like kind of the formal way of saying it, right? I want you to work backwards. I want you to use the slang and then work your
Mm-hmm.
way up. So
Mm-hmm.
we'd use, sort of like something like drunk, excuse
Mm-hmm.
me. So I'd say, well, what's the slang for that? And they say, well, wasted, or even,
Mm-hmm.
or even something worse than that. And then we'd
Yeah,
work our
sure.
way backwards, intoxicated, inebriated, and they found it more interesting doing it that way. Excuse me. So it's just finding the right way to do things. You can make things interesting, but I think you've got to think a little bit outside the box and do it in a different way.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've, you know, because I also teach 16-year-olds, I thought, sports, things like boxing,
Yeah,
things like comparing two boxers, Muhammad Ali, for example. And it's interesting. I'm thinking, surely a 16-year-old wouldn't know who Muhammad Ali is. I put the picture up on the wall and they're like, oh,
right.
yeah, we know about him. Okay, what
Uh-huh.
can you tell me about him?
Yeah,
Is he still around? What happened to him? Why is he no longer, boxing? What happened to him? And and then I can show them a text and say,
yeah,
do you agree with what the writer is saying about Muhammad Ali, that it's shameful that he's got beaten up and he's unable to fight any longer because of brain injury? Do you agree that it's a brain injury, or is there something else? And people say, no, that's not what I heard. I heard that it was actually a disease.
right.
There's
Yeah,
I believe it was. He's got Parkinson's, I think, if I
yeah,
remember right.
yeah,
So, and students are. What is interesting for me is that they know about him, and
yeah.
they want to engage, and they want to talk about him. you know and then so that when I give the information that I've got, they can look at that and say, no, that's not right, or he's got, the writer's got the wrong perspective, the wrong idea, the wrong attitude
It's
about,
brilliant.
and then that sort of generates interest. I did another session, and again, I thought, I don't know how this is going to work, but there's an environmentalist girl, in
Hmm.
Sweden, Greta Thunberg.
Yes.
And it was the same thing. I said, what do you think about the environment? Well, whatever. There's not much we can do about it. Oh, yeah, we've got some green studies going on in the college. And then I put a picture up of the girl and say, what do you
Yeah.
think about her? Oh, we can't stand her. Oh, she's awful. Oh, she keeps yapping on. Oh, she keeps doing this. And I said, why can't you stand her? What is it?
Yeah.
And they're telling me, the things that they can't stand about her,
Hmm.
and then I bring it round and say, well, we're talking about delivering speeches and what people do to deliver speeches, and you're mentioning the same point, which is that she keeps banging on about the same thing. How dare
Yeah.
you? How dare you? How
Yeah.
dare you? And this is how she, sort of tries to get her point across.
Hmm.
And in it, what the learners are saying is, it's irritating, but it's memorable.
That's right. It's
Yeah.
piquing their interest. It's piquing their interest. I mean, sometimes when I'm in the class, I will completely go off subject and we'll
Oh
talk
yeah.
about something else for 10 minutes. And
Yeah.
then you start reeling them back in. And I'm not an English teacher. I'm not a maths teacher. We do implement that in construction, obviously, because it's part of it. But then
Yeah.
sometimes what I do is I'll use a word and they'll
Hmm.
say, why are you using that word? And then I'll tell them what it's mean. And they say, well, why can't you just simplify it and say that and I say, well, why can't we do it the other way? Why can't we use a bigger word? You know, and sort of like if you're talking to somebody and they use those big words, because I, sort of like, my background is I come from a council estate. I left school with no qualifications,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of like it was hard, sort of like kind of getting work. And then I realised that I needed to sort of like kind of study. I probably wasn't ready at
Mm,
16.
mm,
I probably
mm,
wasn't
mm,
like
mm.
a lot of these students. But then it's piquing their interest. So I'll write on the board something completely unrelated to construction. So the other day I wrote up on the board obfuscate,
Oh,
and then
okay.
I wrote up procrastinate and
Oh, okay.
sycophantic, and
Mm-hmm.
and I left it there. And I didn't say anything to them, and they said, well, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, well, they're words, And they, well, what does it mean? And I said, "Well, you're always on your smartphones." I said, "Find out.
Mm.
Tell me what it means. Put it into a sentence." You know. And it was really funny because, like, as they were going out, obviously they're 16 to 18, so they're turning around to their friends and they're saying, "You're being really sycophantic today," and it was really funny. But then they're using that word, and they know what it means. So every week I might do something like that, and then they learn something else.
So here's my question then. Do you think 16-year-olds like the subject or like the teacher?
That's a hard question. I think some of them obviously have come into construction. Sometimes a lot of students comes into construction because they've tried everything else and they
Yeah.
think that construction's easy. But in
Uh-huh.
fact, with construction, there's lots of maths, there's lots of numeracy, there's lots of English. You've got to understand things, and they don't realise that. But I think it's probably a little bit of both. I don't think it's all teacher, and I don't think it's all subject. I think it's a
Mm,
little bit of both. And
mm,
then
mm,
it's
mm.
working out stuff. I mean, when they come in and they go, and I say to them, well, why have you picked construction? And they say, oh, because I couldn't do anything else. I was rubbish at English and maths. So then my next question will be to them, I'll say, well, look at this room. How much paint do you need to do this room? And they'll go, oh, a couple of cans. And I go, well, how did you work that out? And then they'll
Exactly.
think about it. And then I'll say, right, okay, on the back of a can, this might say it covers this per litre. How do you work it out? How would you work out the square? And then they're like, oh, this is maths, or, sort of like how much timber are you going to need? And when you go to a store like B&Q and you're ordering like lengths of timber, sort of
Mm, mm.
you're gonna have to give it in millimeters. So how do you read that? So then they understand that they've got to sort of like kind of get the maths and got to get their English together. That's for the ones that are interested in it, and then obviously you're going to get some students that are really sort of like kind of not interested, or they're sort of they're troublemakers, and then and then there's a whole new thing of what you've got to deal with there.
And
So,
yeah, and how do you deal with the
well,
how do you
yeah,
deal
I
with
mean,
the
you've got to
troublemakers?
kind of look into it. You've got to find out, so like, and also you've got to remember that, sort of like you were once 16 and,
Yeah.
what's going on at home? Sort of like, I mean, you don't want to pry, but, sort of
Mm,
like, did
mm,
they have
mm,
breakfast
mm,
today? I've had
mm,
students where they're so poor that they hadn't had shoes, and you've got to
mm.
refer them to different people. I had a student that kept making cat noises. He
Okay.
might have an EHCP plan, so it's reading that, finding out. This guy that kept making cat noises, after a while, I said to him, why do you keep doing that? And he goes, well, I'm bored. And he says,
Uh-huh.
sometimes I mask. And I said, what do you mean mask? And he says, well, I've got ADHD. And he said, it's really hard for me to act normal. It's like being an actor. He says, I have to put this mask on. And then sometimes that mask slip, and then I start being myself, and I have to make noises. I have to do this sort of stuff because it's really
Hmm.
tiresome
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
masking.
Hmm.
So I said to him, well, look, if you feel that you need to sort of like have a bit of time to yourself, hold up your hand and go outside. I said, there's a courtyard out there. I said, you can go into the courtyard, you can scream, you can make as many cat noises as you want for as long as you can get it out your system. And I said, then come back to the class and see if we can carry on. So there
Mm,
are
mm, mm.
strategies. that you
Yeah.
can use. Yeah,
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Reading Solutions UK. Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Join the free online International Reading Conference on the 11th, 12th and 13th of June. Hear from speakers like TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui, beloved children's author Michael Rosen, fluency expert Tim Rosinski, EEF specialist Chloe Butlin, the National Literacy Trust's Irene Picton, and a range of experienced practitioners, including MATS leaders, deputy heads, heads of English, high-level teaching assistants, and school librarians. Through the 3-day conference, speakers will explore a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Visit Reading Solutions at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk for more information and to sign up for this free conference.
Today, who's I would love to say an expert in working with 16 to 19-year-olds in further education. Kay works with construction students and does a pretty good job. I love that question. You know, you teach, you give them some input and then ask them to ask questions and keep score of each other. And I think that's a really fantastic way to engage and motivate learners in your classes, Kay. Well, thinking about troublesome students as well. You had the student who wanted to mask his behavior. What other troublesome students do you have, and what strategies do you employ?
I think it's trying to find out what's going on. I mean, obviously, if there's something kind of untoward going on inside a classroom, then you need to stop it. You need to stop it straight away. Maybe pull that student out, have a word with them, not nastily or anything like that. Ask them what the problem is, what's wrong. Hopefully they might give you an answer. If they don't give you an answer, then you can say to them, look, let's do this in a different way. So like you can come and talk to me at any time if you want somebody else there. You don't feel comfortable with that, but it's usually there's a problem somewhere else, and that's why they're acting in that way.
Sure.
It might be that sort of like you get a lot of people that are very tough, but then usually you find out that they're not very good at reading, or they've got a dyslexia, or they've got some sort of problem. And that's their way of masking that. That's their way of sort of like kind of, doing something to take the attention away from them. But then it's finding out what's wrong. There could be a problem at home, but it's talking to them. It's finding out what's going on, and then trying to put some sort of like kind of plan to implement a plan so that, sort of like things are going to be a little bit easier for them,
Yeah. I mean, what I found over the years is that I never lose my cool with a learner. I never lose my rag with them. It's really almost like, look, is everything all right? What is going on with your behavior today? You don't normally behave this way. What can I do to help you? And
exactly.
I think for a lot of learners, this is the first time they've had an adult conversation with somebody, to be honest. What they've experienced at school has been, oh, you're doing something wrong. And you're now going to be sanctioned for it. Whereas we're trying to encourage some sort of adult response and adult behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I still remember, at the beginning of the year, I will literally have learners come in, sit down, and get their phones out. And that's the first thing they do. They never mind sort of paying any attention to me. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to, not even to socialize, really. It's just, I'm in my living room, but it happens to be in a different building. And I have to say, excuse me, can you put that away? We're going to be doing something. And they're like, I hate English. And I was like, no, I understand that, but what we're doing is something completely different. Oh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
What's that then? Okay. So what I want to do is I want to find out about you, Could you write me a short paragraph describing you, and I promise I will read it. Not only will I read it, I will feed back about it. I will respond to it. And, that's a lot of work initially, but I have seen learners turn from, using their phones to actually doing some work and actually sitting down and saying, well, I want to improve on this because, there's been a dialogue between us over time. Has feedback ever helped you, develop a relationship with your learners?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's about achievement. It's about achieving something, and it's about knowing that you're doing it in the right way. So it's always good to give feedback, and it's also good for you to receive feedback. I often say to the students, "Did you learn anything today? Did it come across in the right way? Am I teaching you in the right way? Is there something that you'd like to change?" I'll speak to them all the time. And, we've got such a diverse range of students. So it's making them involved, and it's looking at, sort of like the diverse range of the students, and maybe implementing, so if we're talking about electrics, so sometimes I'll turn around and I'll say, right, okay, what colours do we use in a standard plug here? Right, okay, in Britain, in the EU. What colours do we use in India? And then someone will turn around and they'll say, oh, well, it's completely different. It's not the same as here. Or, like in America, when you put a plug together in there, it's like there's no earth. So it's just like kind of finding a connection. It's finding a connection with what you're doing and being diverse about it. So sometimes we'll be talking about construction, and then we'll veer off. So we'll be talking about brick laying, and then we'll veer off and we'll start talking about ancient Egypt and how they built things then. And we'll veer off into different things, and it's just like kind of piquing their interest. And it's like kind of, if they feel that they're achieving something, they want to do better.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
And it might not be big achievements. It might be just like small steps. But as long as they feel that they're achieving something, then that's great. And then giving feedback on that. So it might be cutting a piece of timber in a straight line. That might be a really big achievement to somebody. They come in, they can't do it, or they can't even hold a saw in the correct way. So it's showing them how to use it, and it's showing them their body language. And I'll link that to sort of like maybe sports. So if they're holding the saw, they've got to point their finger, hold the saw correctly, but then they've got to get their stance right. So I'll say, well, you need to. How does a boxer stand?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's linking it to different things, and it's observing them as well as them observing you, and then by observing them, and you can give feedback that way. It's all about body language, how you speak to them, how you look at them. There's a lot that's going on there. Teaching, sort of like, I don't know, I wouldn't call it teaching. We're facilitators. they teach themselves. You can't really teach anybody anything. They teach themselves. You just show them the way.
No, I agree with that. What I've found, because my initial question was, do you think it's the teachers or the subject? And I find that I think we're because my experience is I've been teaching both, young men as well as young women, and a lot of times it's down to the teacher's approval of what they're doing, and it builds up their confidence. It builds up and it gives them that motivation to try even harder. But I have a sneaky suspicion that it's more for our young men, that sort of, with a male teacher showing them approval. I think that counts for quite a lot in terms of confidence and, self-esteem.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
maybe.
I think you could be right. Yeah, definitely. Also, the thing is, I tell them stories. I tell them stories about, when I was on site and how I priced up jobs, how I made money. I talk about, sort of like, right, so, you want to get this together, you need to get some money. You might want some new trainers. You might want this. How are you going to do that? How are you going to get that together? I
Sure.
talk about, sort of like maths and English in a different way and construction. So, right, you need a van. How much is the van going to cost you? What trade are you going to do? Okay, so you're going to be a carpenter. Right, so how much equipment are you going to need to be a carpenter? How much equipment are you going to be a bricklayer? So a bricklayer doesn't need as much as a carpenter. You've got skill saws, you've got all these like power tools. They're going to cost you thousands of pounds. And then you've got insurance, and then you've got to go into town, you've got to pay congestion, and then you've got parking. How much is your parking going to cost you a day? So I get them thinking things like that. I don't just talk about the lessons. I talk about, if you're going to go into this as a business, how are you going to do it? And I tell them, sort of like stories of my experience and what I've done, and it gets them thinking, and it also gets them thinking about, what trade am I going to do? So like usually, they might come in and they might say, "Oh, how much? Sort of what's the best trade to make money?" And I say, well, you can make a lot of money in this, but will it suit you?
Exactly.
Are you talented in that? You still want to do something that you love.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Reading Solutions UK. Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Join the free online International Reading Conference on the 11th, 12th and 13th of June. Hear from speakers like TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui, beloved children's author Michael Rosen, fluency expert Tim Rosinski, EEF specialist Chloe Butlin, the National Literacy Trust's Irene Picton, and a range of experienced practitioners, including MATS leaders, deputy heads, heads of English, high-level teaching assistants, and school librarians. Through the 3-day conference, speakers will explore a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Visit Reading Solutions at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk for more information and to sign up for this free conference.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
According to FE Week, Sir Ian Buckham, the interim head of exams regulator Ofqual, is Gillian Keegan's preferred candidate to take on the role permanently. The role of chief regulator will only be confirmed by whoever forms the next government. The current Education Secretary chose to appoint an interim chief regulator for a year after Dr Joe Saxton stepped down to head up UCAS. Sir Ian began the role in January and Ms Keegan has put him forward for the full-time role, following approval from the Prime Minister. However, Sir Ian's pre-appointment hearing with the Parliamentary Education Committee will not take place until after the recently announced general election on July the 4th. It leaves a potential new government facing the decision on whether to keep the current Conservative-approved candidate or find an alternative. The Indian Business Standard News website explores the reasons for a drop in numbers of Indian students choosing the UK as their higher education destination. 21,000 fewer master's degree applicants have registered than in previous years, according to official figures. Anuj Gupta, CEO of Young Rads, said that Indian students are now hesitant to apply due to stricter visa regulations. Gupta went on to point out the financial impact this could have on UK institutions as they rely heavily on tuition from international students. The article goes on to suggest that the British government has prioritised curbing migration over university student numbers. The article goes on to point out that many Indian students are now considering countries like Germany, which offers a combination of world-class universities, minimal tuition fees and a low visa rejection rate. In Wales, the BBC reports again on measures some head teachers are taking to save cash as budget squeezes continue. A primary head teacher in Pembrokeshire is reported to be moonlighting as his school's caretaker, seeing to day-to-day maintenance, testing fire alarms and water hygiene, alongside teaching and headship itself. Many other schools are responding by cutting jobs. According to the report, the Welsh Government said its budget was £700 million less in real terms than when it was set by the UK Government in 2021. Councils have confirmed to BBC Wales News that nearly 200 schools have been discussing redundancies in 2024, with cuts largely directed to welfare and support services in schools. The BBC also reports on an open letter sent by head teachers from schools across St Albans to parents. The letter calls on parents not to let their children have a smartphone before they are 14. St Albans Primary Schools Consortium urged parents to wait until Year 9 at secondary school before giving them a device. In it, the letter talks of how the devices could expose children to a number of risks, and that whilst it was understandable that phones could give parents peace of mind, children's phones do not need to have access to the internet in order for you to keep them safe. TeacherTap's survey tool published data last January that suggested only 1% of schools had no restrictions in place at all on phones in schools. But the topic remains a cause for concern, especially as smartphones are now a feature of daily life for most adults, and that some children as young as Year 1 have access to such a device. Finally, a West Yorkshire MP is calling for children to be taught about endometriosis in schools. The condition, which can cause chronic pain, affects about 1.5 million women in the UK, according to figures from charity Endometriosis UK. MP Sir Alex Shelbrooke said he had been shocked by the lack of education surrounding the condition. The Department for Education said new RSHE curriculum proposals included the addition of lessons on menstrual and gynecological health, including endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome and heavy menstrual bleeding. Sir Alex said both girls and boys should learn about all aspects of reproductive health. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
And we're back again with Kay. We're almost at the end of our show tonight. Unfortunately, we had that technical difficulty earlier. But we've discussed how, engaging learners in doing things that they are not used to doing at school seems to be the key for us in further education. Having adult dialogue with them also helps to build a relationship. Any other top tips in the last few minutes?
Oh, from me?
Yeah.
Okay, top tips. Just be patient, really. Be patient the students. You don't know what's going on in their lives. You know, for older teachers like myself, you've got to remember that once you were like that age, and you've got to remember, what were you like at that age? You know, I mean, I was terrible. I left school with no qualifications whatsoever. And I was really dogmatic in like my opinions about things. Wouldn't really kind of listen to people, and I had to sort of kind of learn. I mean, I think Mike Tyson was asked something, and I think it was they said to him, "What have you learned through your life and boxing?" And his quote was, "Too smart, too old."
Oh gosh, oh dear.
You know, and I can identify with that. You know, sort of like, you know, if he'd have been this smart when he was younger, would he have made those mistakes? But then again, those mistakes helped him grow. You know, or you know, it's good to fail because you learn things, you get better. You know?
I think that's a really good top tip. You know, it's good to fail. You learn from your mistakes. And you learn, okay, I better not do that. I better do this. I think mentoring, you know, you talked about teachers being a facilitator. I think teachers can also be a mentor to younger people and say, look, you know, these are the sort of things you want to try to pursue in order to become more successful. And I think this is what we're looking for, is success for learners. You know, the other thing that I was always thinking of is that learners, it took me, for example, you know, the age of 40 before I realized this is how I learn things.
Yeah.
You know, this is exactly, you know, learning, you know, I always said no pain, no gain when it came to learning, but I actually had to write things down. I had to cover things. I had to memorize things. I had to repeat the instructions, you know, in order to be familiar with the topic and to be able to teach it, you know, later on. But yeah, so, okay, we reached the end of our program. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's been a pleasure. Great talking to you.
And do have a great half term. See you later.
Take it easy. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.